Hello, my dear students, and the rest of the learners. Welcome to part 36 of a 95-part series of tutorials in object-oriented programming in C++. In this tutorial, we are going to continue looking at the topic inheritance. And in this presentation, our focus will be on the rules of inheritance. My name is Mehmet M, or you can simply call me Emily Swap. The general syntax for implementing the concept of inheritance, or if you want to code a program that is indicating or a code that is indicating that your program is implementing inheritance, then you need to have this section of code. In other words, this is a general syntax for implementing inheritance. We have the reserved one class, followed by derived class name. Derived class name, for those who have been following this series of presentations, is simply a class that inherits the members or uses the members that have been defined in another class. That other class that contains members who can be reused by other classes is usually called the base class. And therefore, the syntax for implementing inheritance is class, which is a reserved name, followed by the name of your derived class, or the class that is going to be making use of members of another class. Then you have the full colon and access specifier, followed by the name of the base class. For example, you can have a derived class called result, which makes use of members of a class called scores. And therefore, in this case, result is the derived class, while scores is the base class. And therefore, the syntax is class result, full colon, public scores. Now, this colon simply is an indication that result is making or is going to make use of, or is going to be given permission to make use of the members of the class called scores. Therefore, the syntax derivation is as follows. Class, name of derived class, colon, access specifier, then name of base class. After that, you have the opening brace, and then you develop the definition of derived class. In other words, what is it that you want to be done in your derived class? And therefore, at this section, you define your class, or you include the code that tells the compiler what this class is expected to do. And then you have the closing brace and a semicolon. For example, if a class called scores already exists, then a new class result can be derived from the class called scores. My dear students and the rest of the learners, kindly note that before you come up with a derived class, you must first of all define or declare the base class. So the compiler should be made aware of the base class first before you can derive another class from it. And therefore, if you have a class called scores that I've already talked about, then a new class called result can be derived from the class called scores as follows. So you have class result, then colon public scores, and then we have the opening brace, and then you make the definition for your class, that is for your result class. So here you have what we call the new features of class result. You define New features. What I mean by new features, my dear students and the rest of the learners, is that for a derived class, you don't repeat any definition or declaration, or you don't do any declaration or definition of data members or methods if those data members or methods already exists in the base class. And therefore, at this section, you only indicate something new, something that is not from the base class. You can even make new definition here. You can make new declaration of some variables or some members here, but you should avoid duplication. Remember we said, the reason as to why we make use of inheritance is to make our program or programming simple. If classes share the same members, just do the definition in one of the classes and then let those others borrow or make use of those members from that class. So that is the main reason as to why we make use of derived classes. We simplify repetition of code. We simplify repetition of methods, and also we avoid repetition of data members. Then you have your closing brace and a semicolon. The derived class has access to all public and private variables of the base class. In other words, once you have a derived class from a base class, that derived class has total freedom to access all the members of the base class regardless of their scope, regardless of whether they are public or private. However, derived class cannot have access to base class constructors and destructors. The derived class would be able to add new member functions or variables or a new constructor or new destructors. Usually, a class derived from others, just as I have said, inherit all the visible members of the base class. The data members, variables, and functions possessed by derived class are specific to the type of class, not to each individual object of that type. A common drawing can be used to illustrate inheritance relationship as follows. In other words, this diagram illustrates the relationship between the derived classes and the base class in as far as inheritance is concerned. So if you have a class called scores, and we have two derived classes, or we have two classes that are allowed to access the members of the class called scores by the names scores result and scores values, then we can indicate it as follows. So in this diagram, I have the class called scores. Below it, we have class scores result and class scores values. I have repeated the word scores to enable you, my dear learners, or my dear viewers and the rest of the listeners, to be able to see that scores result and scores values are simply derivation of the class called scores. So class scores is the base class, while scores result and scores values are derived classes. The following is a sample program implementing inheritance, and it displays value 20 on the screen. So the comment is displays value 20 on the screen. Then we have hash include outstream, and my dear viewers and the rest of the listeners, the syntax remains for object-oriented programming in C++, just as we've been discussing in this sequence of series. Then we have using namespace standard semicolon. We have class scores, and then its definition is as follows. We have one member, data member called mark of type integer, and then we have the following methods. We have one method called scores value. which is going to receive one parameter. And this parameter is called assigned value of type integer. The function called score value is void, meaning it's not expected to return any value to the caller. Then the definition for scores value is as follows. We have there is value which has been received as a parameter being assigned to the member called mark. So the value that has been received by the method called score value, which is of type integer, is being assigned to a variable or a member called mark. And then, just as you can see here, we have the closing brace. Next, we have another method called score display. Score display. This is expected to return a value of type integer. Now, in this case, note that scores display is, or its main function is to return the value in the member called mark. It will return the value called mark. And of course, this returning means displaying it. And then we have the end of the class definition by the name scores. So this class called scores has one data member and two public methods. One of the methods is score value, and the other method is score display. We have the next definition for the class called results. We have definition for the class called result. Now, result is a derived class. It's expected to derive its members from the class called scores. And this class called result does not have any definition. From there, we have our main function. Now, this main function is doing the following. The first action is to define or to declare an instance or an object of type result. Now, as you can see, this instance or this object called obj by the name obj is for manipulating the derived class, and the derived class is called result. Then we are invoking the method called score value. We're invoking the method called score value, and as we invoke it, we are sending to it value 20. My dear students, the rest of the learners, as you can see, score value is a member, is a method of the class called scores, the base class called scores. But as you can see from my main program, I am declaring an instance or an object for the derived class called result. Now, simply, if you look here, it is the object called obj, in real sense, is expected to be used to access the data members of the class called scores, because that's where score value has been defined. But because the class called result has been given the permission to access all the members of the class called scores, then that's why you can see that whereas the object called obj is for the class called result, at the end of the day, it is also able to invoke or make use of the member called score value, who is a member of the base class called scores. So we are passing value 20 to the member called score value, that is the member of the base class, through the object for the derived class. And then the next statement is to display. What are we displaying? We are displaying the the data. We are displaying the data that has been received by the member called score display. Now, let's look at this. When we invoke the method called the score value, we are sending 20 to 8. So this is our method. So score value is receiving the assigned value being 20. Now that 20 is being assigned to the member called mark. And that's what that method is doing. And then because the score display is a member or has the scope of the class called the scores, score display is able to access the value that has been assigned to the member called mark. And what is in mark? What is in mark is value 20. And therefore, when we invoke the score display function, it is expected to display on the screen value 20. And then that's the end of the main function. Is going to return, or this statement tells the compiler or returns the control back to the operating system. It tells the compiler to return the control back to the operating system. And therefore, that is the end of the program. So as you can see, this program is simply showing us how a derived class can be able to manipulate the members of the base class by the use of the derived class's object. So when a class is derived from a base class, even its object, the object that it has, can be used, or that derived class's object can be used to manipulate the members of the base class. And therefore, this program is going to display value 20 on the screen. Let's now code this program in C++ editor, compile and execute it in order to see whether it is for sure going to display value 20 on the screen. So let's start our C++ program. So we load our C++ program and we are starting a new project. So it's win.2 console application. Then I'll call it rules of inheritance. Then, okay. So this is the normal process that we have been following to create or code our programs in C++. Then we are going to add a new item that is called C++ file, and I'll still call it rules of inheritance. You are always free to give the name of your choice as long as you can remember what your program owns. So let me just copy. I'm just going to copy this program. This is our program. I have already coded it in Word. My dear students and the rest of the learners, you are also free to copy this program in your exercise book and then code it in C++ editor, or you can just code this program in a word processor and then copy that program and paste it in your C++ editor. So let me open my program. I have this program in a 1D processor. So let me copy my program. This is my program. This implementing inheritance. So I'll just copy my program that I've already explained. I'll just copy my program and then I'm going to paste it in my C++ editor. So here's my program. You are also free to code this program in your editor or type it in a 1D processor and then just copy it and paste it in your C++ editor. So let me click on save. Once you are done with coding your program, you save it. Next is to compile our program. So how do you compile? I'll click on build solution. Below here, you can see the output. If our program is successful, we are going to see if it has errors, we shall be informed. So our program has succeeded, and that means it has no errors. Then the next thing is to compile my program. So remember that once your program is successful, you have compounded, it means it has been converted to object code, which is executable. So to execute our program, we are going to click on debug, and then I'll click on start without debugging. So you can see this is our output. I said while explaining that our program is going to display the value 20 on the screen. And for sure, you can see our output is value 20. So we are going to press a key to continue. Let's go back now to our presentation. So we have been able to see that this program is implementing inheritance, and we are able to display value 20 through a derived class. Yet 20 is a value that has been stored or held temporarily in a member called Mark, whom belongs to the derived or whom belongs to the base class. So in the program we have looked at, class scores is a base class of result. The names and definitions of the members of class scores are included in the definition of class result, just as you have seen. So class result inherits the members of class scores. And in this case, we have seen that our derived class called result has been able to inherit all the members, both the data member called mark, and also there's one for display, and also the one that is receiving the value. So class result is derived from the class scores, and class result contains a sub-object of type scores. You may derive classes from other derived classes, thereby creating another level of inheritance. So in other words, you can derive a class from a derived class. So the following example demonstrates this. So we have a class called discourse. That's the base class. And then this is a definition of a class, or it's a declaration of a class called result, meaning it's a derived class. Derived class of which class? Scores. Then you can also have a class called value, which is a derived class of another derived class called result. So class result is a derived class of scores, but is also a base class of value. The number of levels of inheritance is only limited by resources. And with that, my dear students and the rest of the learners, we have come to the end of part 35 or 36 in this series of tutorials. Let's meet in part 37 of the 95 part series, in which we are going to learn about types of inheritance, beginning with what we call the simple type of inheritance, in object-oriented programming. Congratulations for learning Part 36 on the rules of inheritance in object-oriented programming. You can access videos for the other parts in object-oriented programming series, as well as other computer or ICT videos by clicking or tapping on MLSwap ICT YouTube channel below this video. Remember to subscribe to the channel by tapping on subscribe button below this video in YouTube if it's not currently reading as subscribed. For any further correspondence, kindly write it to us through the email mlswap@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening to me, and God bless.